it gives the advantage of it of an executive summary being filed in Parliament. It prevents all the ministers or the Prime Minister or anybody commenting on his stay in office from any suit. In other words, you know what is said in Parliament is what we consider privileged.
Yeah.
So if it's privileged, it means that whatever is said there, it's part of what we may say free and frank public discourse. It's the best place to raise an argument and not have to worry about the implications of what is being said.
Yeah.
The little trouble with that is, for Mr. Griffith, is when that is said where it is said, and the issue arises as to he takes offense by anything said in Parliament. He cannot sue a parliamentarian.
That's right.
So if we were to put that in a different way, if it is one were to accuse Mr. Griffith of acting in an improper way at a parliamentary level or within the Parliament, it could all be viewed as part of public discourse and part of acting in the interest of the national community in asking probing questions about somebody who held a public office. If it is that is done privately, meaning that if you say something in a private forum, that could be subject to defamatory comment, or it could be subject to some sort of scrutiny.
Now the one that you switched on, let's try that one and take off the one you're using now. Okay, let me hear you. The one that you were using.
Yeah, let me try that.
Oh. Stand by, folks. We're trying to adjust for Reid here so that we can see and hear him.
Okay, I'm here.
Yeah, I'm hearing you loud and clear. Nice.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Right. I think we're good now. We finally did.
Good.
Forgive me. Sometimes I'm not a techie person, so I struggle with that. Sometimes I get it right and sometimes I don't. When my staff isn't around me, I'm a fish out of water. So, Dave, we were chatting about a small little issue. And Miss Haddad, we are expecting her officially at 5.
Okay.
I had a discussion with her a few minutes ago, and she told me that she would try to join us a bit early, meaning perhaps around 4:30, I'm hoping. If not, we definitely will have her from 5. So we'll have a full hour of her. Yeah. What we were planning to discuss with her is the success and or failure of the Tobago Carnival festivities and the economic boon to Tobago that we were hoping that it would bring, if it brought any. So, but we would get more into that. I don't want to preempt Ms. Haddad in terms of her position. She's the head of the Tobago Chamber of Commerce. Yes. And I wanted an expert brought in rather than I proffer my humble opinion. But we small talk about a little thing before, about a little law before we get into into the core discussion.
Yeah.
What I was reading in the newspaper is this. Mr. Griffith, Gary Griffith, the former Commissioner of Police, he held that position from August 2018 to August 2021. What has recently surfaced in the newsprint is that Mr. Griffith is saying that between his demitting office in August 2021, between, let's say, November 2021 to July 2022, there was no public comment on there being an audit into the his discretion that he exercised in relation to granting firearm license to certain individuals. So he's saying that all the story and all the old talk about his discretionary powers in relation to granting firearm users license to persons, it never really raised its head until he launched the NTA, which is the National Transformation Party, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right? So when it is he launched the National Transformation Alliance, his political party, it's only then that the Prime Minister began to harp on the disturbing reading that he got, and that he found arising out of what we call the audit report. So what is in the public space is there's now an audit report in relation to Mr. Griffith's discretionary powers in granting firearm users license. That report is a report prepared by a group of unnamed persons. Mr. Griffith has filed legal action where he's seeking that the persons who formed that committee, in other words, who prepared that audit report, to those persons to be named. They weren't named before. And so when the Prime Minister says that it makes for disturbing reading. Very often if somebody prepares a report, you ought to name who prepared the report. So therefore it lends legal sanctity and it lends authenticity, and it gives some sort of credence to its credibility when you name the author. It's like you and me. Then we are laypersons. If it is we make a pronouncement on a matter of national security, our lay opinion wouldn't really count. It will just be say, dude, there's two simple fries like David McIntyre and Furry Daddy all talking about national security, something that they're unschooled about. So what Mr. Griffith is saying is that we need to know who prepared the audit report to determine whether the persons who prepared the report, who will address their minds to the report, are persons sufficiently qualified to comment on something like that. It's like you don't want O-level students commenting on something like geophysics, which is something outside of their realm.
Yeah.
So for the listening public out there, what we're looking at is, if there's an audit report speaking towards the discretionary powers that our former Commissioner of Police exercised when he granted licenses, or he gave permission, or he contributed in some way to licenses being granted for firearm users, then that audit report could have a potential impact on his character, his credibility, and how he's viewed in the eyes of the public. Mr. Griffith is simply stating, because if there's an audit report, tell us who it is prepared the audit report. So at least we will be able to say whether it's learned minds, whether it's people who have the good sense to put together a report of that caliber, or who has the credibility and the know-how to actually collate such a document. The Prime Minister, together with other ministers, David, are now being ordered by a High Court to appear and account for their actions. If I may refer to, I like to refer to what is in the newsprint. According to the Saturday, October 29th Newsday report, article by Jada Lotu, it says that the Prime Minister and several of his ministers are expected to appear before a High Court judge next month as he considers whether to grant an injunction to former Police Commissioner Gary Griffith to prevent the publication of the controversial firearm users license audit report. The thing with it, David, is if it is the audit report, is a report that speaks to an issue that touches and concerns how the public views certain things, meaning that it's a issue of national importance. It's an issue that will open the eyes of the national community to what happens behind the scenes. In other words, the report ought to be a balanced report. It ought to be a report that also considers what Mr. Griffith has to say. In other words, if there is a report that is compiled and is going to be lodged, an executive summary of it is going to be filed in Parliament, and the report is going to be made public in some forum or be made available to the Police Service Commission, then Mr. Griffith, whose name is involved in that report, ought to get an opportunity to respond or have to contribute or to contribute in some way. In other words, if something critical is said of him or something that could affect his character or his credibility, that something he ought to be allowed to respond and defend his good name or defend his actions. So Mr. Griffith is taken umbrage by the fact that a report is prepared involving his name or affecting his character or may impact on his credibility or the discretions he exercised whilst in public office or whilst acting as Commissioner of Police, and that until he was able to or is able to impact on that audit report in some way or respond to what is alleged in it, then the report ought not to be made public or not to be laid in Parliament. Have you been reading about that, Mr. McIntyre, David?
Yeah, I've been trying to follow it, but I'm not too savvy with the legal bindings of these kind of high cases and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
I am just
I can understand that.
yeah.
But do you share the view that if it is your name is being put in the public space pertaining to certain findings, do you think that it's fair that a man should be allowed to respond to things that are being said about it?
Well, yeah, but I am kind of siding with Gary there that not allowing it to go to Parliament, because I think that's the place where you could say what you want and get away scot free. Then to that could be very tarnishing to your image, your character, and your future political aspirations. So, I am kind of on Gary's side, because when I heard that these guys will be summoned to the court, Farid, I like to be real. I knew that wasn't going no way. Some fancy loophole, some learned person will come in with some sort of a segment or phrase or whatever that would have shut it down. The moment I hear that the High Court is summons for the Prime Minister, the Minister of National Security, I say, when I go with that, nothing going no way. And lo and behold, when I heard the Attorney General say, clause 2 shut down, or whatever, second shut down the first, I say, well, here goes the game. I think these things are just to confuse the man, the grog, the man who is not a legal mind, the man who is not too interested in that height of legal confrontation and stuff, because we dumb like that when it comes to that. At the magistrate's court level, people might have little experiences, because the magistrate court is like a fish market out there. Anything goes inside it. But High Court is a different ballgame. I know that. I had experiences dealing in the High Court and stuff. So when I heard that they're going to, a good friend of mine who knows that I work with the media, we can't keep that very low. He knows that I work with the media. I said, Mark, did you hear that about 6 or 7 of them is going to be hauled before the High Court by Gary Griffith for something with the fire users license and stuff? I said no. So I tried to pick up as much as I could on the issue, and I said, David, that ain't going no way. Those guys at the top these days, Farid. You see some of the leaders these days. When you look at Donald Trump, you look at the guy from North Korea, you look at Kim Jong-un, you look at the rude boy from Russia.
Yeah.
When you look at those behavior, it seems as though it's a norm now that you don't interfere with them once they get inside of it. Once they're at that level, you don't interfere with them, fellas. They have all kind of fancy ways. They can have. What surprised me with this issue that we were discussing here is that the Attorney General spoke after the first issue of from the court. What do you call that, Farid? The first what do you call it? A discourse? What do you call it? The first summon, all right? Yeah. And then he said the second part take down the first part. I said, Papa, the game start. I said, that fellas ain't letting that happen at all. You mad? Prime Minister, Attorney General, Minister of National Security, this kind of, you can't take down the fellas. Them fellas overnight will fix something and amend things quietly and come and say, because people don't go into detail and everything. I take minds like you and Richard and think to go into detail of everything. The man, the ground might just go by what's up on the front burner and they say, okay, the AG and them, but the Prime Minister, National Security, and the National Security Council are being hauled before the court, so that will hit the street. And everybody says, so. By the time the AG come and respond, where Section 2 or take down Section 1, that happened overnight, You think he did here at the same time with us? Why didn't make a statement there and then, at the first instant? The moment I hear second stage, take down first stage, I think I said, David, forget that. Don't even try to learn. That's for Farid and them. You're not in that league. Just listen and learn. Richard is here with us. Good afternoon, Richard.
Richard, how are you?
Richard, are you there? Okay, let's continue.
While he's joining us. Yeah. What we need to bear in mind, David, is that there is what we call in this country and any part of the world where democracy prevails, what we call the right to natural justice. Natural justice allows that if it is an allegation is raised against you, that you get an opportunity to respond. And your response could be either to admit what is being said about you or to
deny.
Or to basically deny what is being said against you. And if it is, you can offer a defense. Or if it is, you can offer an explanation that you get an opportunity to respond. In other words, somebody can't say something and you don't have the right to respond or the right to say. So if it is a man is accused of theft, I'm just using an arbitrary example.
Yeah.
You don't just run with that narrative that he stole. You approach the man and said, listen, it appears that there's some questions to answer here. On the surface of it, it may look like you did something wrong, but maybe you could explain yourself. And the man could correct the situation and bring into light things that may not have been considered.
Yeah.
So in other words, that is natural justice at its best.
Yeah.
Richard, you're with us.
I was here all the time when you all asked the question, but I was trying to warm up the camera. Sorry about that. And I wanted the computer to carry out one function at a time. So I said, while it was warming up, I didn't want to unmute, you know?
Yeah.
So what's the question? Good day to both of you. What's the question again?
Good afternoon.
It's good to see you. It's good to see you.
Good to
What
see
we were
you.
dealing with, we were looking at this whole issue of the former commissioner, Gary Griffith, taking issue with the fact that the audit report into the firearms license, this report, we are told, has been prepared. And what the Prime Minister is proposing to do is to present in Parliament what he calls, or what really exists as or subsists as, an executive summary. It means that the Parliament and the government, being the whole of executive office, they're putting a summary of the report. They're laying it in Parliament. In other words, they're putting it up for discussion, what the findings of this audit report reflect. The beauty of Parliament is that you can speak just about anything under the sun, and you don't have to worry about civil remedies being sought by the persons you're speaking about. So let us say they want to make a comment on the report, and the report says something negative or makes an inference about Mr. Gary Griffith's discretionary powers in granting licenses. Mr. Griffith would not be able to sue any of our beloved parliamentarians, or to say that, they're saying something that impugns his character or impinges on his character, because they have the protective umbrella of what we call parliamentary privilege. But if you and I were to say on this forum here something about Mr. Griffith and make a pronouncement that is outrageous, obscene, wrong, and impacts on his credibility in some negative way that right-minded people out there may believe us, thinking we are authorities on some level, then we could be brought before the court for defamation and be sued and our last dollar taken away from us. So there's a difference in terms of us laypersons and parliamentarians. What Mr. Griffith is saying is that he has sought action before the court where he wants to prevent the Parliament from, or the Prime Minister from, laying before Parliament his executive summary. He's saying that it seems that, and I'm subject to your correction because you may be reading on your own, it seems that Mr. Griffith is of the view that after he demitted office in August 2021, that somewhere there about November 2021 into July 2022, an audit report was prepared by an unnamed committee the persons who put that audit report together their names weren't brought into the public space. And then just around July 2022, the Prime Minister comes out and says that what he read in that report made for disturbing readings. In other words, he has formed an opinion on the discretionary powers of the former commissioner and goes so far to say that the reading is disturbing, what he's seeing there. What Mr. Griffith is responding to say is, if this report was compiled, who are the persons who compiled the report, and why wasn't I approached to give my view or to explain my actions before the report was put together? In other words, and this is where David and I were before we saw you visually. Mr. Griffith is simply stating natural justice would allow, and I'm not quoting him, but I'm saying inter alia, I'm summarizing, that natural justice would allow that he be consulted. Just like if an allegation is raised on you or me, Richard, and you don't expect that David will go and make it a public house announcement without consulting either one of us and say, hey, I've been hearing some stories about you all. Or you want to respond, or you want to clarify the situation. Mr. Griffith seems to be indicating that this audit report that was prepared, he was never consulted. So he is filing an action in the court and has filed an action where he is trying to block. I'm using lay language. He's trying to block. He's seeking injunctive relief to have the parliament not discuss or have the report not relayed in parliament. Because remember, the lay persons out there, the general public, anything they read coming from a minister's mouth or a member of parliament's mouth, they believe it to be the Bible truth, that the ministers could do no wrong and they could say no wrong. And if minister so-and-so says it, well then so be it. They quote him like if he's Bob Marley or Sparrow. So what is your view? Do you believe that if the report was compiled, that, and it has been compiled clearly, that the persons who compiled the report, who contributed to its existence, those persons ought to be named? And if so, if they are named, do you think Mr. Griffith ought to have been allowed an opportunity to respond to what is inside there before the report is compiled? Your volume, Richard.
Thank you so much, Farid. I didn't get in too fast, so you saved me some energy. It's difficult when you're going in half a minute and then you have to start all over it. So stop me in time. We operate on the basis, Farid and Daddy Mac, of transparency, not so? Openness in government, in public office.
That is the hallmark of democracy.
Right, yeah. And Guy Griffith was holding a public office. Parliament is also a public office, yeah?
Yeah.
If you're going to read something in the Parliament where people have a protection through immunity, if I may say so that they could say something and not be sued, but what is said in Parliament would find its way into the papers, and when it gets there and on television for the news and on the radio stations, people now could discuss those things and say it all over the country. And Griffith would not have had an input in it. Isn't that unfair to him? It would be. And two, it would be unfair to him because he didn't have an input into it. And that denial of the input means that the standard and the requirement of natural justice was not fulfilled. That requirement was not fulfilled. And therefore, if I were in his position, I would have done undoubtedly what he's doing now, which was to go to court to stop that action. To use the Parliament in such a way is to use the Parliament in defaming people, strategically defaming people. When you want to use the Parliament in such a way, it also stands to reason that you are not using the Parliament for the intended purpose of the Parliament, which is to bring laws and to help clear up things, to govern the country better, and so on and so on. You see an opening and you're using that opening to defame people. That's wrong, and therefore Griffith is right. If the Prime Minister wants to table that report, he should call a press conference and table it and say what he had to say. And therefore, if Griffith has any need for legal redress, then he could so go to the court, probably get even an attorney such as yourself, Farid, and commence legal proceedings against the persons who would have done that. But in general, you're going to do a report like that. I think it's fair to let the person whom you are, we try to call it like you're investigating the matter, the gun license, the FI, what do you call it? The FUL.
Yeah.
Right? So since you're doing that, the main person who you must talk to would have been Guy Griffith, who was the commissioner at the time. How you could do a report and conclude the report, and the number one person you needed to talk to, you didn't talk to that person. Right there discredits that report. So no one should take that report seriously. So if anyone stand up and saying, what kind of reading the Prime Minister said is? Disturbing?
A disturbing reading. He said it's disturbing reading.
If us Guy Griffith had said they didn't interview me, just ask yourselves. Why I think they didn't do that? Naturally going to be disturbing. Who it satisfies to say it's disturbing? Isn't Guy Griffith looking to run for Diego Martin West?
Yes, and he was saying that just when
Come
he launched
on.
the National Transformation Alliance is
Yeah,
when the Prime Minister began to talk about it makes a disturbing reading.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
almost he seems to be insinuating that the Prime Minister strategically brought this into the public space just when he launched his political party and when he indicated that he'll be contesting the very seat in the very constituency that the PM normally stands for elective office. So he's going
No,
to challenge him right in his own constituency.
no, I was speaking through Guy Griffith's eyes, through his point of view. But you know,
Yeah,
in politics, what happens? Eh?
yeah,
So on this one, I can't fault the Prime Minister for taking, how should I say, a defensive or how should I say, an offensive approach to defend himself in his constituency. I can understand that because surely he would want to win again if he intends to run. And based on what he said last night, which is that at the end of the day, I want to be your leader. You know, you just talk. Or I
yeah.
expect to be your leader. I have it recorded. I'll deal with that in due course. I want to know what that expectation is based on. We'll get to that at some point in time, but we look into it. I don't know the people down there expect to do what he's saying he expect of them. I'd want to know where's the justification for developing such an expectation, but he's right to say so because he wants to run. So through his eyes, he has to do what he has to do to win. Because how it comes down to in politics, you don't run to lose. And sometimes it doesn't mean you have to be fair all across the board. So I can't fault the PM for doing it, but I'm just speaking in general. It's wrong to use the parliament in such a way. And through Guy Griffith's eyes, he should have been interviewed so that they would have had a more comprehensive report
Right.
that we all could have said it's a credible report. You could believe what was said in this report and it can move forward. The report must be discredited.
I'm with you completely. I'm with you completely. What I'm concerned about is if it is the Prime Minister is using his office to attack the character, if indeed that is what he's doing, if he's using his privilege as a parliamentarian, his office as Prime Minister, his position as leader of the People's National Movement, as the head of government, to attack a prospective candidate, then it lends itself to, it lends itself to one forming the view that our democracy is in question, that
Yeah.
somebody holding public office could stoop so low, if that is indeed his position, because that seems to be Mr. Griffith's view.
Well,
Richard,
I'm seeing your guest is here, but let me just say this and then we welcome Miss Diane Haddad to the set. But what you are seeing also is an erosion of that democratic principle because the way they have set up the elections within the PNM coming up later on this year, from 1 day of voting to 3 days of voting, and no one could understand that, and no one could understand the rationale for it. It seems as though the erosion is not just happening slowly, but now it may be in full stretch. It is galloping. So it is becoming quite concerning, and people, citizens, ought to be concerned about what we are seeing and witnessing. So I'll give way for. Yeah.
We'll have to monitor. I'm sure more is going to come of this situation, and we'll be able to develop this discourse along those lines in the coming weeks. Richard, we have Miss Diane Haddad with us, as you would have seen. She is no stranger to the public space. Very, very vocal, very vociferous, and in no way is she fearful of anyone. So I'm sure we're going to get a free and frank discussion from her, and a fair one today. Ms. Haddad, welcome to the program. You may know Richard Norrie. He is the main host. I'm just the sideshow. My name is Farid Ali. So we're here to discuss with you your views in terms of Tobago, and particularly the Carnival experience that just culminated in the Sister Isle. You know, we as Trinidadians, Richard and I, we're looking in, we voyeurs, so to speak, looking at what's happening in Tobago. I wasn't there. So perhaps we could start by you sharing a bit of the work that you do, the work that you do and what you have been doing in Tobago.
Good evening, Farid and Richard. I see Ruben and David there and to your listening public and viewing public. I am here in the capacity as the chairman of the Tobago division of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Of course, I need to always say that that is voted in voluntary and there's no financial reward. So I need to indicate that because people seem to think that I am a highly paid CEO of some type for the chamber. So this is representing the business community. I'm actually a business owner myself, doing distribution on the island, representing different companies, specifically from Trinidad. So from an economic standpoint, if I may to say that the Tobago Carnival, to give an overview in terms of a perspective of what was the outcome and to give a fair assessment, I think I'm usually quite fair. I think the hoteliers and guest house owners and so would have benefited from full beds during the period and their properties would have been utilized. And so they would have gotten some good revenue. And I say that without fear. Whether the events on the island, because the numbers that were bandying about was that we had 80 events to take place in 1 week. And the weather would have affected a lot of the events, firstly. However, there's the other aspect to the economies of scale and the numbers. 80 events on an island with a population of 60,000 persons, where you have at least 50% of either elderly people or persons who do not participate due to religious reasons and so in carnival celebrations. So you would have had a part of that population with an interest for participating in the carnival of itself and the events surrounding it. Therefore, for the event to be a successful one, we have to be in a position to facilitate inviting people, be it Trinidad as our first market and outside of Trinidad, to come to the event to be participants. So I want to say that's why the hotels would have been enjoying full beds, and that would have been a benefit for sure. But as you know, I would have been the spokesperson for years and continue to be the head of the Inter-Island Transport Committee, which speaks to the air bridge and sea bridge. And under the circumstances, I want to say that Kyle would have put on 5 more flights generally for bookings. And then they did use jets and pull up a couple of extra jets during the week to bring people up. So for the numbers, and the Port Authority did put on extra sailings and so, for the numbers to move to make your event successful. Because for Voice to have an event, Nadia Batson to have an event, Kess and Lord Nelson to have an event, Burna Boy and whatever to have, these are big events needing big numbers. They need large numbers of people to make it financially viable. And therefore, we need to have large numbers of customers or consumers to participate in the event in order for the event to be successful. So we need to do things according to the size. So for instance, I drive a Honda City and everybody says, why you don't drive a bigger vehicle? The roads in Tobago are small. Why do I need to drive a vehicle to be uncomfortable on a small road? And I'm using that to say, we need to manage what we do based on the size of the island that we are on. And that for me would explain, besides the weather, whether people were in a position to participate in all of those events, because the Juve seems to have been very successful. The Mud Mass, which is always a winner in Tobago, seems to be very successful. And the Sunday event where the participants dressed in their pretty costumes and the steel band going down the road with Massey and so, that all seemed to have been, well attended in terms of and appreciated. I'm saying for all of the external events that were attempting to benefit off of the celebration or the economics, I'm not sure that went well. So if they had good sponsorship, I'm not sure what the sponsors were able to do. If they had good financial sponsorship, because I can't just speak to people who go into the promotions and just give out samples of stuff and, you buy some, they give you some. Not that I'm speaking to. If they got good financial sponsorship, they may have come out break even, lose no money, but did they have a good event? From the sponsor's perspective, did they get a return on their investment for the expectation of when you go into an event, the number of people that you are supposed to reach in doing your marketing or branding for the product that you are going in for? So that has been my take on it. That's what I have seen. And I don't know what else. I mean, the rain surely washed them away in many areas. So, and of course, it's very clear for me, year after year, whenever we have anything with Carnival, that people like Juve because they get to do what they want without their face being shown. And so the mud and the Juve gets to hide us and we could do what we want. So those are the successful events.
Allow me to ask this. Are you of the view that October was the best date for the event? Or your organization, what is your organization's position in relation to the date for the event, meaning an October date? Are you of the view that a different date would have given Tobago a better opportunity to prepare for the event and remove?
No. Let me say, Farid. What about the date? We used to have Oktoberfest under the Orville London administration. It did not get very far because within the first few years, it started to have stabbing at the bottom of Burnett Hill. And that's when Mr. London said, cut it out. I have to tell you, I actually participated in the Oktoberfest then. And I can't tell you that October was the wrong month because the weather was quite good then. We are in a country that has 6 months sun, 6 months rain, basically a wet and a dry season. We don't have very much to play with. And May to November, or some people say the end of May to the whatever, from geography, from me from to Form 3, I remember it was May to November, right? So whether that's the end of May. So if some people say it's June to whatever, okay, whichever it is. Let's understand that once we speak that period, schools are all closed, and so because it's supposed that that's the whole season for bad weather and things like that, all August. So to say October is the right or wrong month, I'm not sure that we have that God vibe yet, that we could have the Jesus moment to decide what the weather would be. So that to me is really you have to take that as it comes and hope for the best. Maybe we got God vex. I don't know. Maybe he vex.
Let me say, good day, Ms. Haddad. I've listened to you for some time on the economic affairs of Tobago for quite some time. Throughout last year, and I think the year preceding that one, you have made the point, and you got it across quite clearly through different media houses, that the economy of Tobago had fallen flat and that it was destroyed and so on. I tried to find an inkling of evidence to rebut that, but I was unable to find any. So I fell in a position where I was in full agreement with you that what transpired had definitely damaged the economy of Tobago terribly. Did this carnival in any way at all help to commence the turnaround of the affairs of the Tobago economy, in your opinion?
I can't honestly say yes. And you'll have to pardon me, my sinuses are acting up like badly.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right.
But I can't say so, as I would have said, even in discussions with people. At the end of the day, such a hole has been created. This has to have a strategic plan for a way forward as to how we are going to move out of the hole into success. So one off, fill the beds for one weekend or a couple nights in the week, or maybe they were lucky to have a full 7 days because, you know, some may have come for 3 days, so they may have enjoyed that. Richard, that can't fix the problem. That can't fix a 13 or 14-year-old problem. And therefore, disappointingly, but we would have looked forward to this administration meeting and sharing their ideas in terms of a plan for moving forward, a plan for strategically, based on their mandates and their manifesto and what they promoted themselves to do. I have to honestly sit and tell you today, after 10 months, my eyes have clouds in it. I see none of it. And that is very disappointing because they declared and claimed that they were the answer and that they were young and they were vibrant and they knew what had to happen. You know, yet people, I don't know, they're just, I am clueless, to be honest. I don't know what they're doing. That's the truth.
I know this event in and of itself would have been insufficient to trigger the turnaround that the Tobago's economy is in start, because if they're going to continue with it next year, what you would find is that you're going to have now a deeper form of preparation. Your distribution company, the logistics associated with it, more carnival products and so on may be needed on the island. More people may be employed to make costumes and so on. Better planning and a route for the bands, and more people may get involved. Those things, when you look towards next year, you don't see it as helping the turnaround?
Yeah, but I can't wait 12 months to fix the turnaround of 14 years. I need to understand when you are going to do things, you need to forecast what are your short-term needs now to get us out of where we are. You need to clearly have your medium term in terms of what will happen in 6 months or whatever, and then the longer term goals. So yes, this can be a calendar event that takes place every year, this period, and you know how to plan for it. And the actual customers that you're trying to attract, they will also know how to plan for it, because some people may say, look, I don't want to go to Tobago August anymore. I'm going to save my vacation time and enjoy the week for the carnival. And so you may see a shift in who are your clients for August. Space may be now freed up for August, and different persons may now use August. So there may be a shift, and then we may have an accommodation of more Trinidadians coming over, sharing wider space. So all of that, Richard, actually comes from when you have a plan, and a proper plan that people are aware of, then the person on the other side can sit and work with it in order to do what they're doing. So the message I'm giving here is to the people that we want to attract. If they know what is happening, Old Year's night is usually a good night in Tobago. Everybody comes up right after Christmas. Boxing Day is busy in Tobago, so they come from Boxing Day and they spend that week. Good. I also have holidays and I want to take my time. I normally go Easter, right? But I always get problems. But I'm really a carnival baby because I don't go carnival. I stay in Trinidad for carnival. So I want to have a second carnival event. Therefore, I may now say, I am giving up Easter, or I am giving up summer. I'm going to book my... Remember, the country still have to go on, you know. People still have to work. We have to produce. You know, we are the party capital of the world. And the sad part of us being the party capital of the world is we haven't understood that we need to be the host and hostesses. We believe we all need to be the participants. And that is what destroys productivity as well in a nation that carries tourism. Remember, tourism is a business. So we have to understand it, that we have to be inviting and hosting.
And before I turn it back over to Farid, and I agree with you, the business of business is business. And therefore you must plan to make sure the business activities that you'd want to have, that those plans are done properly, sequenced properly, and you get from it what you intend to suck out of it, if I could say so. You said that the THA, the assemblymen, they're young, new party, vibrant, and so on. You being in Tobago for some time, doing business, leading the chamber across there, what would you like to say to them, given that you have acknowledged that they are young, that you would like to see done that they may not be aware of that could help the economy of Tobago?
Well, let me say that I will not use youth as an excuse. So let me tell you, I offer no place, I give in to no, what's the word? I have no space for excuses. We are very good at making excuses. So no, youth for me is not a negative. Youth for me is not an excuse. Youth for me simply means, and notice I spoke to the energy. Youth for me means that they would be able to handle, as people get older, they probably value life differently. They really value sleeping later, getting up, probably doing the exercise routine, it changes as you grow. But young leaders who sit from a side and, let us say, criticize and decide that, hey, these people are not doing it well for me and my family and my children and my generations that I feel have a specific need or a specific one or deserve a specific direction. Vote me in. I'm going to make the change because I understand this era and I'm going to fix it. And so they are trusted or entrusted with the power to do it. Therefore, you must know your ability. And let me tell you where I do give excuses. If you are not capable, then you need to be smart enough or / intelligent enough to draw on good resources for guidance. And a good student usually takes their lessons in well. So if, Richard, you are not prepared to do that, because, they have young people who feel they know everything already, right? Okay, so I'll explain to you. Many years ago, I worked in the bank, and I was young and busy and, busy. I think I still am same as busy then, now as I was then. But I felt I should have been a bank manager in no time. I was really, I was learning everything, doing everything. And then I went into my own business. I had a story with the landlord. I had high court matter, bam, bam, a windy case. But I was young. I was 20-something years old. Let's understand how quick this life is. But I won. So I had all these experiences and then I was working at the Ansi McCall group. And I was very busy again. And I was moving up very quickly. But I'll tell you something. I had the privilege of sitting in boardrooms or big meetings where people who were much older than me sat and made decisions. And you know what I realized? Wow, how important it was for me to go through the journey to learn all what they had in that room that no university document gives you. And the intellect that was in there and the thought patterns of how you made decisions, it threw me into a totally different perspective as to Diane. As good as you are at that age, you would not have succeeded without that experience and knowledge. So take your time on the journey. And when you get there with all of the rest under your belt, that's when success will come. So I'm sharing that because I went through it. I'm not speaking because I got a free pass anyway. So I'm saying that, Richard, because yes, we're young and yes, we know and yes, we feel that we are connected to the people at our age group and we are being cheated and people above us are suppressing us because they're there so long, right? As they don't move out, we deserve a chance. And I agree with all of that. That may be fine. But where's the surrounding force or army that you understand what it requires for you to succeed, right? Because many people have also a lot of documents behind their name. They're very academic and whatever. And if I put you out there in a strategic place where you have to make decisions, they probably stand up in an international airport and get lost. That is the point I'm making. So this is why I'm saying that for me is not an excuse. So the youth is off the door for me. You went there, it was for two reasons. Either you had the experience and you actually have the know-how and you know what you're going to do, or in going there, you're prepared to learn and make the sacrifices required in order to carry out the mission and goal that you set out to, which you promised the people. Because our problem is it doesn't matter what age group. We are happy to just make promises and don't give them we don't do it. It's okay. It's a norm in the country to not deliver what you promise. And it's okay because I am comparing myself to the other people who promised more but delivered less. So it's okay. I didn't do so bad. Rather than let me compare myself to the document I presented and I'm going to deliver that. That's the line that's the marker that I should be using to classify or mark myself. That's my point, Richard.
Yeah, and that addressed the youth aspect of it when you started the show, when you said that, they said they were young and, vibe, their energy level is high. The second part to the question was, what would you recommend to these assemblymen, remove the youthfulness or the absence of it, that you think Tobago needs now to help the economy move forward?
Well, let me start by saying that they have had no stakeholder interaction, and that is fine. You see, that's why I'm telling you, I'm not giving the excuse for youth a chance. That is fine. If we, the business sector, the private sector, the community people, they're all fine to do nothing or to challenge you in no way if you are delivering. So understand my point. I don't need to attend meetings to say that I in the meeting for this and that. I'm not interested generally. But if what you are doing affects the outcome for me and my staff and my family and that whole cycle of economics, which is not me alone, I'm speaking me meaning everybody. If what you are doing affects that and you are not delivering or doing a good job, then for God's sake, you need to engage other voices for ideas to help. So that has not been happening as I would have shared with you. So they don't know, or maybe I stupid, they probably do know the plan they have is not the plan we're looking for. And it might be a self-serving plan too. We don't know. Time young, but 10 months done pass, Richard? Mm-hmm. 10 months gone. Year one is off the table. It's a 4-year term.
Right.
Nothing delivered, nothing done.
25% gone.
But we got 0% of anything.
Right.
So that's one. Two is, so you haven't engaged anybody, and therefore you are the know-all. That's fine. I am happy if you're the know-all, just deliver. I sit and run my business and I'm just seeing things happening and I'm busy. I have my heavy tea, so if I have to drive truck, I'll drive it. But here what? I don't even need to be there. So what does that mean? Therefore, we have sat. You can't reach anybody now. We are in Towers of David, I don't know, Towers of Ivory. Nobody's answering the phone. And that type of thing is what's going on. So is it that the internal fiasco is having a very serious impact? Is it that persons are now wondering, what is my future? I have 48 less 10 is 38 months to go. Let me see how best I can fix me and my family before I get out, because I don't know whether I am now a member of the PDP or the mystery party. I don't know what the owner / leader of the party is going to do, but he seems to be orchestrating on the other side some pretty powerful comebacks, right? Good. So is it then that I need to just treat with me and fix me and humbly move out when the time comes because I really don't own, it ain't mine, right? What is the thinking? Richard and Farid, I don't know. We are in mystery land right now. So,
but is there anything you would like to suggest to them that you believe could help the economic activities of Tobago head in the direction that we would all like to see it head into? Yeah.
Richard, we have, even when the budget presentation was done, I had to actually say to the chief sec in the meeting, but those programs are programs that we wrote at the chamber and presented to the past administration. Somebody did their homework. They went and dig up a lot. So I'm saying it's not that we don't participate or not willing to share, but the ideas now are okay to be ideas. Why else am I going to say anything when they're not doing anything with it? What are we wasting time for? I have no more of that to give. I'm sorry. So even the things that they've gotten, they've done nothing with it. So let me share one with you. I don't know if you had the privilege of listening to the chief sec last week. Was it Monday, the 17th? I'll not forget the date. Monday, the 17th of October. I was invited to have a signing ceremony between the THA and the banks. The bank, I wouldn't call any names, for a loan guarantee program. And up to the 17th, I'm waiting. Where's the invite? Where is it happening? Am I to go in James Park and sit down dressed to wait to hear where it's taking place? Only for the chief secretary to publicly apologize to me, calling my name as if it's me personally and not the organization. But he's apologizing. And he promised to get it done himself by the 31st of October, which was... Where are we going, Richard?
Well, it doesn't sound good.
All right. And the only person who probably might speak to you very honestly and bluntly about it is this lady.
Well, you have always done that. You have been
I am not going to cover what's going on because too many of us want... Many of us...
Is Ms. Haddad doesn't like the current administration, or is it that she prefers? But when I heard your comments, even about this administration, before this meeting, I said, but this is a genuine, objective, fair-minded lady who's genuinely fighting for the economy of Tobago. So I felt that was important and really good. And I think your comments, they can be accepted as fair comments, you know. And I always like listening to people like you who would take up a genuine, fair and impartial position on any matter because you're speaking for Tobago and by extension the country.
Thank you very much. I have to say something to you there. I really don't do this from the position of wanting an invite to a function or a party or dinner. I am least looking hungry. People's position, their names, their power, their wealth, none of it bothers me. I really wish everybody well. I do believe that I am here to make sure that I live and love everybody in whatever capacity. So when I speak, it is not about not loving the person or liking the party, or that's irrelevant to me. It's about us actually loving each other and fixing the place that all of us should share equally. That's really where my head is at, and it's what I live by. So I guess that will eventually come out because I know people have been trying to figure me out. Is she a PNM? Is she a UNC? Is she a ONR or whatever? I don't know why they want that.
I'm personally trying to run my own assessment based on the comments. And I think I was not alone in that regard because people always want to know where someone is coming from. And after listening to you before and listening to you again, even with the new administration in Tobago, and your position is still just for the people of Tobago, I thought I would have started hearing someone who is trying to find ways to defend the new administration, but that's not your thing at all. You are out there looking for improvement, and you didn't get it before. It appears as though you're not getting it now, and you're expressing that whenever you get an opportunity to do so. So I think that's admirable. Yeah.
You say that. Some people say, but she never satisfied with nothing.
But some would say that too.
Yes,
that is why I was asking you all the time, what would you recommend? Because I say, well, listen, let's hear what you could table to see what they could do to see if they could come close to correct it. But you made your point. You gave them a lot of information before. They don't listen. They don't carry it out. If they have better ideas, you are receptive enough to wait and see if let them roll it out. If it's something working, you would say so. If it isn't working, you would also say so. And that's the situation. And I think that is a very good. If more people could adopt that position and posture that way, I think Tobago and Trinidad will be moving in the correct direction and will become more prosperous in a shorter space of time. But let me invite Mr. Farid back in. I know you have some questions here. Farid.
Ms. Haddad, are you of the view that the apparent strain in the marriage between the leader of the PDP and the chief sec has negatively impacted on the progress of Tobago?
I would want to say yes. I don't believe that it wasn't there prior to the election. I absolutely feel that there was some sort of sore or wound prior to the election for this to come out so quickly after a win like that. It stands to make sense or reason that things were not all well at home prior to the, I want to say the anniversary, because they were married before, right, Farid?
Yeah.
So the marriage was before for them going in, or maybe that was the courting. The courting is always nicer. And then sometimes we see problems, but we still go and get married. And maybe the marriage was sunk in the election. But, you know, even a bad marriage does last at least 2 years. I've worked it out. It actually comes after the first baby born, and that's when all the quarrels take place. Who need to stay up later or not, and who have less consideration for who. But this didn't even last the 2 years that I know.
Yeah. Now, Watson Duke came out very vociferously and said that $17.5 million was spent, and that he considered that money wasted. That Tobago has had its problems where retaining walls should have been erected with that sort of money to, you know, alleviate some of the problems that Tobagonians have been facing in the immediate, meaning with all that bad weather we've had and all the land slippages, all that has been happening in Tobago. In Watson Duke's view is that an excavator comes or somebody comes and they push the dirt aside, and no retaining walls are being put up, that the money invested in the Tobago Carnival could have been better invested in other places. Are you of the view that the kind of money that was invested in this carnival effort could have been better spent?
All right, let me say that the only way I will want to dig into that is first call for an explanation or verification of how the money was distributed. Because we have no idea out of 17.5 what went to promoters, what went to infrastructure, what subsidies were given for different events. I don't know. We have no idea, Farid. So the first thing that we will need to do is ask for an account of the spend. Then I may be in a position to say, well, you know, the carnival that was already advertised, which you could not decide you're going to just cancel, could have costed a little less, and therefore you may have had 5 or 7 million to do XYZ. But without that information, I think I'm not in a good position to be as risky as Mr. Duke to say that he thinks that money should just go to retaining walls. Because let me further say, the infrastructure on the island needs much to be desired. In terms of drains and the roads, money has been badly spent in the past. We have people who are filthy rich off of it. And up to now, the roads are still a mess. As they pave one side, the washer line bursts and the big hole opens back. As they fix the street and they thing it up, next thing you know is the bitumen starts to crack again and the thing fall down. Are we doing the right surveying to find out the soil, what is happening, and whether we are doing the right type of work for this? So it's not just that you own a paver and you own a backhoe and you own a grader and all of a sudden you are a roadman. And this is what I think has destroyed the quality of what we get. So let me say 17.5 will need to be explained before I further comment on that. However, I want to say that they have hundreds of millions that needs to be answered for in terms of bad spending of the taxpayers and the people of this country's money. And I will say something, Fareed.
Yeah.
The people of this country need to start to understand that they own it, that they own the country and the money, not the politicians. They are entitled to an equal share like you and me.
When can we expect an audited report of how the money was spent?
I don't know. We will have to ask the THA. I think we need to call for it. We need, if it is you are asking me, then I now need to go out there and say, hey, here what's happening. The media people are asking me to answer questions that I don't have details on. So I may probably use your platform to ask the THA to say, you need to give an account to the people as to the spend of $17.5 million.
Has your organization made such a request, or are you?
No, we haven't. Come on, the carnival just over. Let's get real. This is still Trinidad and Tobago weird. We're going to ask for an audit to get it when. But I think now that there are questions to be answered, and the fact that you all are going to throw these questions, it deserves some sort of explanation. So we can ask for them to give an account, and they would not be able to close off those things immediately. So as soon as they are finished closing off, they need to account to the people and give explanations as to the spend.
The issue of accountability and transparency is being waived in the public space, not only in Tobago, but in Trinidad, looking at Tobago. Recently, we read in the newsprint that a $20 million contract was given to a Trinidad company that has only been in existence since 2020. The procurement process for that company to get a contract has come into question by no other than our dear Prime Minister. He is stating that the view was that the contractors in Tobago are PNM, so therefore the THA seem to have gone the other route, the reverse route, and give a Trinidad company the contract in order to deprive PNM contractors of this $20 million. I'm just saying that to say whether there is truth to what is in the public space or not. It is clear that money is being spent in Tobago, and big money is being spent in Tobago. Are you of the view that the procurement process in handing contracts to non-Tobago companies stands up to scrutiny?
So here you throw this ball at me. So the first thing I would want to say, based on what you just said, was that you said that the Prime Minister said that the contractors in Tobago are PNM.
There's a view that they are PNM, not that he said that.
There's a view that they are PNM. Well, that's sad, Isn't it sad that you had to be a PNM to be a contractor to get to? So that is sad. But I may say that statement is probably 99% true, but that's sad. That's what I want to say. The other thing I want to say is, in reading that article, Fareed, I don't know if people recognize, and it's good when reporters actually put what the person said, because the language used is an indicator, right? So I read one, and you were speaking about one for 20 million. But what about the 54 million? You read of the 54 million?
Yeah.
Right. Because I know you might throw all the balls at me at the same time. So let me start to bat. In the 54 million, the young man actually said to the reporter, based on what's in the article, I was asked to put in a tender, put it in, and I win. What is the problem? That is what it indicated. So my question, to be honest with you, would be, who asked you to tender? That is what my question will be. because the inexperience of the language speaks to question marks. I was asked to put in a tender and I put it in and I win the bid. So who asked you? Because I thought the process was we put out something that everybody is aware of, a tender, and people who are into that business will put in their tenders through the process. So by his very language, I have to tell you, I have questions to ask. Who asked you to put in your tender? Because you didn't sound like you are somebody that continuously looks for tenders. You understand what I mean? Yeah. So they pick you up and they call you and ask you. That's what the language meant to me. So it does have question marks there for me. And the process, I have to say, even in speaking to people over the last 2 nights, the comments would be, but these persons who speak of corruption seem to be comfortable with corruption. That's the language being used. They spoke of corruption and who was corrupt, but they seem to be comfortable with corruption. Because, frankly speaking, we have contractors on the island who are at the bank's throat right now, and we totally disconnected from them, regardless of what. I would have spoken to the chief sec with regards to this. They have been alienated, cut off, put aside, and then the process to give it to whoever. And to me, Trinidad, Tobago, I try to see if we could live as one. Who told you, who called you to tender, and how come these are given to Trinidad contractors and the people here are starving with a bank over their throat? Huh? It makes no sense. I have my own views and I do my own analysis. So I am still in the process of analyzing. Usually I wait for the results and then decide whether I was bright or not so bright. But I have my perspective on it.
All right. Are you of the view that the Smithfield-Dutchford Connector Road that they spent the $20 million on, that took 19 days to complete and 24 hours to award the contract, are you of the view that that money, that $20 million, was worth the investment? And I'm saying that, allow me to say this, I'm saying that purely on the basis of Mr. Duke is stating that Tobago is so small that you could dissipate traffic in Tobago in 10 to 20 minutes, that you didn't need a connector road. And that $20 million could have been spent in another way to benefit the poor man in Tobago.
He may have a very valid point. I have been on a committee, though, that was speaking to that road for quite some time, and it was in the works to be done. That's the truth, right? That's not a make-up story. That connector road and many others were in the pipeline to be done. Whether the timing was right, whether it was necessary now, there is also some type of perspective that that road would have needed some special work because of the type of soil around there. And the story I get, and this is, I could be held accountable for this or whatever, but that history has it that there was some river that went through there years gone by. And so they have to be wary of what they do there. However, whether the timing was right, whether a 24-hour contract was right, that seems to be questionable. It seems to be wrong. What was the urgency, right? What was the urgency? Particularly when all we keep hearing is, but we have no money and we have to account for the people's money. We have no money. We have to account for the people's money. So we have no money. We have to account for the people's money, but we give out a 24-hour contract as per what you just said. Because I have to tell you, I don't know. I don't know that the contract was given out in 24 hours. I'm clueless.
Kelvin Morris is saying that the minority leader, he's the one who said that the contract was decided upon within 24 hours. The proposal was put in and within 24 hours, they were granted. Stuco were granted the contract. And
who owns it? Who is it affiliated with? All of those are question marks.
And it's a company with no track record. It's only been in existence since the year 2020. So it's not to say I'm not in any way making a pronouncement. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm trying to get the feedback from you.
But they are genuine questions. They are genuine questions. And to be fair, I have had people also call me and say, Diane, you have to listen. Kelvin Morris did an excellent presentation on the opposition bench. Now, people call me because they know I'm objective. And they know that I really hold no brief for anybody. And so I went and found it and listened. And to be fair, Kelvin did a very good presentation. He was on point in terms of what the reality of what was going on. So I am not going to take away the points of whether Kelvin Morris is right or wrong, or he in the opposition. As Richard would have worked out, that's irrelevant to me, you know. I demand living in a country. You spoke about it earlier. You said I'm fearless. I own point whatever percent of this land space and point whatever percent in that treasury. I own it. And I am going to open my mouth and stand up for what is my entitlement. And if all 1.5 of us do that, I guarantee you will get the leader you're looking for.
Fali,
I think you're right. Go on, Farid. Go on there.
Fali is saying that he inherited a fiscal year. The election was in December of last year, if I'm correct. And it would mean that the fiscal year ran for about 5 months. It was running for 5 months before the THA as it currently subsists exists. So he's saying that $300 million have been, they were in debt. And some of the $300 million that has been spent, most of it would not have been spent under his tenure or under his guidance. So in rebuttal to the proposition that nothing has been done, he's been saying that he's operating under minimal access to cash, that so much money was spent before he assumed office. So it seemed like our Fali Augustine has gone on the defensive, batting on the back foot. He's recognizing that darts are being thrown at him, fast balls are being bowled at him, googlies are being bowled, and he now has to answer to holding office is so much more difficult than being an armchair person like ourselves and looking at what the leader is doing. We are actually looking at the shots he's playing now and questioning the integrity of the things that he's doing. Are you of the view that the current THA executive, because of how the politics played out, entered our office at a disadvantage and now are being wrongfully judged?
All right. So as I told you already, I'm not listening to excuses, right? So wrongfully judged or rightfully judged. Let's go back. Richard said it earlier. Diana, I've been trying to figure you out for years. I have finally come to the conclusion that you are serious and you are about country. Agreed?
Yes.
If I go back now, Farid, when Dr. Rowley came into power, all I was saying was Kamla, 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 Kamla. Kamla was the problem for non-performance for years. An entire cycle passed. God hear me, Kamla is still the reason we can't perform. Well, if Kamla is still the reason you can't perform, then guess what? You are not a performer. Let's forget that. So let me go back. I may listen. Fali has come into office as chief secretary and he is speaking to PNM. Okay, the money thief, the money bad, spend the money this, they spend it in advance, they leave me in debt, right? What am I going to do to sit down and materially work out how do I get out of this financial situation and keep my economy rolling? Let me say that's exactly what a business owner has to do after the pandemic, during the pandemic, in a downfall of an economy, in hard times, in the tunes of raising fuel prices, whatever. We continuously have to sit and get the entrepreneurial mind going. And how do I materialize and work all the magic to get into the economics of saving my business and keeping it going. The light bill doesn't change. The phone bills don't change. The loans don't move, not unless money is moving and turning. And therefore, that is the mindset that has to run your island. So I cannot sit down here after 10 months, right? And listen to, because, okay, so we have a 300 million money that they use, right? They eat it up, they swallow it. I can't bring it back. I am going to do the audit and bring forward what the truth is so that the people have an understanding of what took place, so that when the people are choosing again, they will understand how I brought it out and why I should be a choice next rounds again. Because I have come here to perform and to deliver to the people to ensure that their lives have a change of meaning. Therefore, what I have to do is get strategic and work out my financial way out, and my social way out, and my economic way out, and the physical way out, and the material way out, and the spiritual way out. But I have to bring it together. I have not seen that. So I can't sit here and tell you that I am in forgiveness mode, right, and listen to that and say, well, is it fair that because they get a debt, is it fair that I got a debt from COVID? Is it fair that I have a 2-year debt to pay for COVID for losses? I'm still dumping expired goods. Is it fair?
No, it cannot be fair.
Right. So what is fair? So get up and perform. You asked people to vote for you. You told them that you were capable. Get up and do your job. And that doesn't go for Farley alone or for his administration. That goes for everybody in this country. They can take
it.
Go ahead.
1 second, Farid. Crime and criminal activities naturally will be impacting business in Tobago. The Prime Minister said, before he became the Prime Minister, as you mentioned, he was talking Kamla. He said when he was not Prime Minister but opposition leader that if the government cannot solve the crime problem, then they are part of the problem and not part of the solution, and then they should call an election to get somebody in who can really address it. That is on record.
Play over the record.
If I knew we were going to get to that, I would have get it and run it for you now too. Based on what is happening now and listening to him last night, in my opinion, he did not give an explanation for where we are with the murders and other forms of criminal activities. He seemed to have no solution and nowhere close to a solution. How you react to that?
Well, once you can, because I don't want legally for you to put me in trouble, right? So once you have the record to play.
No, we could. Ferry, did you have that too?
No, what I'm saying, based on what you said, I am responding. Yeah. And I'm saying if that is the case, go and play the record, put it on pause, press rewind and play it again over and over. And if that is the case, let them call the election.
So you should apply to him.
Exactly. They have failed miserably at crime and criminality. And I will share with you that a minister would have asked me week before Monday, if you had to fix the problem in the country with trust, how would you fix it? So I'll share it publicly today for the first time. And I said, you would have never heard this before, and you will probably never hear it again from anybody else. But your cabinet and the parliament will have to go to the president, Madam Paula May, and ask for presidential pardon for everybody in this country, clean the slate, and give everybody a free conscience that we can start over. So if we do it and we say the cutoff date for thieving and robbery, and we forgiven everybody, we cleaning up the judicial system, they said to me, so you letting the prisoners out? I said the prisoners only in there because somebody cheated them of what was theirs, and they fought for it. So we clean up the slate, forgive everybody, and we have clean consciences. I guarantee you that we can start over fresh, and then we apply the brunt of the law to anybody who breaks it. And they all looked at me like, is she crazy? And one other person said, you know, she's actually right. It might work. And I said, that depends on who is leading the process. It's not necessarily going to work with the wrong people anymore. But then I said, imagine if I went and campaigned on that. You know, even the politicians and the opposition will vote for me. You know, they will vote. Imagine if I go in and pardon everybody and all the politicians, past, present, and whatever, will vote for me. Eh?
Well, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, everybody will vote for me because remember, giving everybody pardon, your conscience clear. You don't want to stay in there to fight to get a lawyer no more, to try and stay out of jail. Could you be imagine, you know, how many police, customs,
I know there are a lot of politicians.
The private sector, they do anybody who in money laundering and illegal activities. Well, everybody will vote for me because guess what? They're getting a pardon. They're going to clean the slate.
And anybody who violates the law thereafter, they would feel the full brunt of the law.
Full brunt of the law. No accommodation. Zero tolerance.
Farid.
Richard, allow me to ask this. Ms. Haddad, if it is we will look at the international landscape, the political landscape, recently, and I'm marrying this to our Tobago situation, recently we saw Rishi Sunak, a 42-year-old, being elected into prime ministership well, not elected. In this case, he was nominated into the prime ministerial position in England. Before him, we have Sanna Marin, the Finnish prime minister. She's a 37-year-old. She was elected into office. Up the Caribbean, if we were to come closer to home, we have Thomas Mitchell in Grenada, a 47-year-old elected into office. Well, Canada is a living example, 51-year-old Justin Trudeau. Our political landscape, we have a 73-year-old Kamala Persad-Bissessar who will be contesting the election in 2025. She's made it very clear at age 73 she intends to...
How old was Macron in France when he won the first time?
He was very young when he won the first time.
Something too, when he won the first time?
The first time, yes.
Yeah,
but he stuck around well before his sell-by date. So this is where I am. Our Prime Minister, the beloved Mr. Rowley, he is now 73. He's 2 years senior to Ms. Kamala Persad-Bissessar. So basically what we're looking at, if it is we're projecting our eyes, Ms. Haddad, to the year 2025, we'll be looking at a 75-year-old Keith Rowley and a 73-year-old Kamala Persad-Bissessar putting themselves up front to take this country forward. When we look at Tobago, we have a very young Farley Augustine and a relatively young, I would even say young, Watson Duke. The fall off in that relationship doesn't augur well for the 2025 general election because they put a spoke in their own wheel in terms of the general election moving forward. Are you of the view that we have a leadership issue, both in Tobago and Trinidad, but I want you to focus on Tobago, and that we should trust the youth to take us forward and allow for some teething problems at this stage?
No. And I'm saying no to the second part of your question. Listen, Farid, I said it just now, I'm not sure where the spin is and what whoever prepared the questions is trying to get. Let me be clear. If you are not prepared to handle it, then please, this is about people's lives and livelihoods, children's future. I am quite involved in the education system as well. And you have no clue what's going on, but it's a disaster. Okay? And I'm saying, I offer no apologies for saying this. If you are not prepared to take the blows, the licks, the hours, whatever comes with it, do not go there and pretend to fool people, because what you then are going for is self-gain. And we have had enough of that, Farid. We have had enough of that. And I am saying the youth and the teething problems is one thing. I said it just now. But if you have nobody around you, or you are clearly not inviting some brain matter around you, if you don't have it, then I guarantee you have another plan. So I'm not trusting you. You're not young and stupid.
All right.
So you're young and really smart.
the first part of the question, let me rephrase it. Do you trust the seniority and wisdom of 73-year-old Keith Rowley and a slightly younger Kamla Persad-Bissessar in taking Tobago and Trinidad forward?
No, let me say, I don't know why you would have used the word wisdom there. Anybody who is wise doesn't do the things that they did. So please, the two don't go in the same line. If you speak to, let us look at the Kamla Persad party, that regime. I have to tell you, it's quite weak in terms of what surrounds it and what's the body of it. Is it that they can construct something better? Yes. Is it that we are again egotistic and our egos are swallowing us up, why we do not know when to let go, when to hand over, when to release? Is it that that's what is blinding the situation of decision making in the best interest of all? If I look at the other party, the party in power, do you have a similar problem? Or is it that you have that kind of dictatorial, I am in charge, all you just had, so everybody else is not able to express themselves. They're not able to work and deliver because they are being subdued and constrained by this overpowering, I don't know what's the word after, help me, probably the overpowering attitude or whatever, and everybody just has to dance to the beat of the drum or else. So, again, that's the ego. That's the ego growing. It's just
the authoritative.
But that's the ego, Richard. Spiritually, and I think that's the ego. Anybody who operates from the ego behaves like that. Anybody who operates from the I in you, which is the God in you, will see the bigger picture, the wholeness of the people. And then your decision-making process is different. Now, mind you, it's a hard place to be, but it's what leadership requires. Successful leadership, because you also have leadership who, as I always say, create gangs and whatever. They're leaders too, they're able to mobilize. They're able to mobilize and they're able to get loyalty. But they are equally leading people down the wrong path. Okay? So it is leadership qualities. So I may possess leadership qualities, but it's what am I doing with it? So I can have a whole band going down with me, and I can decide. So we had Jim Jones. Didn't Jim Jones have everybody and he was the leader? And what did he lead them to?
Death in Guyana.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So this is why I always say to people, I'm really not such a good team player. And they go, what? Now people take that the wrong way. But what I mean is if we set out as a team on a goal, and we've come to the team to play football, our goal is to score goals in the goal post. If when we reach on the field, 15 minutes into the game, I see 4 fellas come off and they come back with the same football uniform on, but a bat and ball in their hand. And they are now trying to play cricket in the middle of our goal game, which is to score the goals. I'm telling you, they have no team there with Diane. Diane going and make sure that the cricketers in football clothes either come back to be footballers or disappear because we go in to score the goals in football. That's the part of me that many people don't understand and can't accept. But once you set out an intention as a team and you stay on that intention, then you will be a good leader. Once you sell something to people and then you try to manipulate a few to get your own way, you're cross-threader. There's no place for you in leadership.
What you have just outlined there and expressed as good leadership qualities, that seemed to be absent at this time. What we are witnessing is quite inconsistent with what you just said. So where are we as a result of that? Where are we heading? Nowhere. Because with what we have, given what we have seen over the last 7 years, I think the economy was better in 2015 than it is now. We started off then in a recession and we have moved to depression. Where are we heading? Where are we heading?
I can tell you a number of us are depressed.
Well, of
Richard,
course.
I have a question for Ms. Haddad, if you could bear with me.
Somebody seemed to be in the background giving you questions for me. Hold it.
Ms. Haddad, the marriage between Trinidad and Tobago, that union, began somewhere in the 1890s. The relationship is 130 years old. Are you of the view, in your experience, that marriage between Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidad has been good to Tobago? And if it's not good, do you think that Tobago is ripe for autonomy at this stage? Independence, going their separate way?
History has it, and this is the story on the island, that it wasn't a marriage of two parties in love. It was a forced marriage. And therefore, that's where the issue is and has been. Whether Trinidad was good to Tobago, I would say no. In the agreement, history has it as well that Trinidad was supposed to and continues and should continue to provide equality to Tobagonians or people residing on the island of Tobago by ensuring that subventions are given, the entitlement of that money that we speak to, that, you know, people calculate, and so there's so many Tobagonians and look how much money, and that they are supposed to have access to Trinidad at really equal rates to Trinidad, moving within Trinidad. Okay? So I want to put that publicly, and I want the whole public, I want all the media to play this over and over and over and over and over, right? Because everybody does mathematical calculations now, rather than what has happened in the past, what was the commitment, and whether it was delivered. Now, so that subvention, that ensuring that the port works in a particular way, the airline and airbridge works in a particular way, those are entitlements in the marriage. You know, that was the, what you call it, where you have to bring a dowry. Right, so that is part of the dowry. Excuse. Oh Lord. That
Ms.
is.
Haddad, we're going to let you go in about 1 minute and 23 seconds.
Oh Lord, so you want the sneezing to stop?
Yeah, no. I want you to be able to take care of yourself. You can administer proper care to yourself.
Yeah, all right. So,
yeah.
So the thing about it is that was part of the dowry, if I want to classify it. And therefore, what has happened is Tobago has been cheated from an infrastructural standpoint, from ensuring that the island developed for all of the needs. And so that has not happened. We should have been a good tourism aspect of the business and so of the other big brother or big sister, and we failed miserably. On our side, did we manage it well? I have to say no. Up until a particular time, yes, we were doing okay. The administration before, you know, with Mr. Hochal Charles, he had very little to work with, but he did well with it. And so we were on the right path. We had a clean place. We had people that were working, productive, proud. And then we've started to decline and lose all of that. And that's where we are today.
All right.
So are they ready for managing themselves? You could answer that by the questions you asked me for the entire afternoon. And that ends with a big no.
All right, Fareed, thank you so much, Ms. Haddad. I want to thank you for coming on today and being as candid as you have been with your expressions on the show, as always. And I'd ask Fareed to have the final word and to thank Ms. Haddad for being with us today. I hope she comes back on sometime. I like her views, Fareed. I want to ask you to bring her back soon, because there are other angles in relation to the governance of our country that we'd like to have a perspective on. Fareed.
Ms. Haddad, Tobago is not a young bride, it's an old bride. And I pray that the relationship between us and Tobago improves. But I believe Tobago has to carry responsibility for the abuse that it took through the years. You know, when a woman is in a loveless relationship, but she doesn't have anywhere else to go, she normally stays and suffers. I hope that you all, meaning Tobago, find a way to stand up for itself. Whether it means seeking some form of autonomy in order to manage its own affairs. Let us see if that route is the better route. So thanks for being available.
Thanks for having me. However, the bride, we will have to renew vows and start all over. So maybe that's why we need the presidential pardon for everybody. Thank you all for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks again.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Ms. Haddad.
Okay.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Fareed. We look forward to next Wednesday.
Okay, Fareed. Okay, Ms. Haddad. Producer, Daddy Map.
Yeah, Richard.
Yeah, I would listen to the news.
Okay, great. News straight ahead at Power 102 Digital Wednesday.
Power 102 Digital. Streaming 24/7 on power102fm.com and on the Power 102 Digital app. Power